Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Notorious Momz, the podcast. And I am here with these beautiful, lovely ladies. Ladies, tell the people who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Michi, and alongside with Melissa and Negro, we have a podcast called All In on Everything. Where
Hey.
shout out to us.
Yes, all in everything. Check them out. Yes.
Yes, I mean, as you can, just from the name of the podcast, we talk about everything. So we're here today, talk with you.
Yep, I'm Melissa. So I am actually the third member that kind of joined in late into that podcast, but it's been a great experience ever since. And like Michi said, we talk about everything. Nothing's off limits, and everything's just from our perspective, real life situations that we go through. So we're excited to be here and talk a little bit about that too.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we're going to jump right into the topic. So we are going to discuss how, and this is like a common topic. And the reason why I wanted to like bring this to light a little bit is because I've had conversations with other people. And this topic is like coming up a lot. So I'm wondering, like, is this a thing? What's really happening? So I wanted to get everyone's perspective on what you think. So, when we get into relationships, I feel like as women, we get in relationships. Sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good, but we can't see it from the outside like other people see it. And sometimes we can lose ourselves in these relationships. You get so engulfed in a relationship that you don't realize everything else that's happening outside of your relationship. And it's like it causes you to sometimes lose your individuality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've experienced that myself in a few of my relationships that I've had, and I think it sucks sometimes.
The crazy thing, yeah, the crazy thing is, um, when Meech told me that we were going to be talking about this, it was kind of like wow, because that was actually something that we touched on the first episode that I was just a guest with them before I officially joined, and it was just kind of my story. And I was married for 13 years. And we're like recently separated now and going through all that, and that was one of the biggest things for me. Was I got married at 21. I was very young.
Mhm.
And I felt like that, like I don't even know if, like, in my situation, if it was so much of losing myself or just never really knowing who I was to begin with, because I was so young. So trying to figure myself out, but not really even knowing like what I liked, what I didn't like, what my goals were, what my boundaries were, because I was so young that I didn't get a chance to grow up and figure those things out.
Right.
So then as it got later on, that's when I'm like, oh my God, but like things like, just feeling like I had to be home all the time and I had to be the mom and the wife and never not really going out, and it wasn't even something that was put on me like, oh, you can't go do this, you can't go do that. But me, and that, what we're raised with, that old school mentality,
Yes.
that you can't
Oh
be
gosh.
out there, hanging out with your friends. You're a mom and you got to do this, you got to do that. So this topic is it does hit deep for me because I feel like I do have a lot of experience in that area, but we can
Yeah,
go
and me too.
deeper after. But
I could definitely agree with Melissa. I think that um last year was probably one of those years that that I realized that I had lost myself for a little bit. The question is, right, how do we know when we lose ourselves?
Right.
Do we ever really realize it, or do is it at the end when it's over and you're like, I should have seen the flags, I should have
Mhm.
seen this,
Yes.
I should have noticed then. But if we pay attention to ourselves and we basically start noticing when you start caring more about someone else than yourself, that right there, my friend, is the first sign.
Right.
Like you might like, oh, did you
Check
eat?
mark.
Yes. Like, did you eat? But did you ask yourself? Did you get what I'm saying? Like, did you ask
Yeah, yeah,
yourself
yeah.
that first?
Right.
So I think that starting from there, it's always the right thing to do. Like, make sure you're good, because when you're good, everything else falls into place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, currently that's kind of like my life too, because I'm currently going through a separation myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been married for 2 years, going on 3 years, and we're currently like headed for divorce.
Mhm.
So I understand that. And now, like, seeing, a lot of people in my circle have told me a lot of things. When you have like family and close friends, and they say
Mhm.
that everybody else sees it before you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one of my really, really good friends. Her and I've been friends for like eons, and she's been telling me the same shit about, what's been going on. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, you sit back and you're finally like, wow, that made sense. It didn't make sense then, but it makes sense now. And it's just like, especially like if you have like a family member, like, your mom or whoever is always like giving you like that negative
Mm,
energy in your ear, like, oh, this is not right for you. This is not the right thing to do. It kind of like, for me, it made me feel like I wanted to prove everybody wrong about my
right.
relationship. You know what I mean? And it puts you in a really weird space because it's like, okay, are you really working on your relationship because you want to, or because people are expecting you to fail?
Right, and
Yeah,
you're
like
doing
what's
the
the
wrong.
motive?
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
and then but then also, like, and you're in when you're in that headspace in the moment, like, you want to make it work. What people are saying in your mind at that time, you're like, well, they're just being negative, or they're just being haters, or blah blah blah. They don't know, and you kind of get defensive when you hear things like that. But then in retrospect, then you see everything, and like Michi said, you're just kind of like, oh my god, how did I let certain things happen? And even if, like, there's cases where maybe it wasn't so toxic per se, but you just lost yourself. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like,
Right.
that
Mhm.
can happen too.
Mhm.
Like for me, like I said, I was very young to where I didn't even know myself. And what I would do is I wouldn't even tell my family things
Hmm.
because
Right.
I didn't want to hear opinions, because it's like, okay, if I tell them this and they're going to give me their
Okay,
two
yes.
cents, and then I'm going to just be torn between, okay, what am I going to do?
Yes.
So I did it like to a fault where I wasn't like letting anybody in, and I was just handling everything myself until it gets to the point where then I was super depressed. I was doing things that were out of character. I was just not myself, and just making stupid choices because of the fact that I was so unhappy. So
Right.
it took a long time for me to get to the point to just be like, okay, this isn't working, and doing the mature thing and just, stopping it that
Exactly.
way, as opposed to, handling it in my own toxic way that I thought, was fit in the moment.
Right.
Do you think that she brought up a good point about being yourself.
Hmm.
Once you start realizing that you're not being yourself and that you can't be yourself, I think that's also a really, like, it's also a red flag. Like, when you have to hide things from the partner, when you can't be yourself, like,
Mm.
there's times
Right.
where you like to go out with friends, even if they're male friends, and you can't because, oh, he's just not that type of guy.
Right.
Or, like, you used to do brunch with the girls, and no, no, I'm not doing that anymore, because it's just like certain things. If you can't be yourself, you got to take all that into consideration, because you're truly not happy.
Right.
Hmm.
You're not,
Hmm.
you
And
know?
then you're kind of like in isolation mode because I think that that's where that starts heading, right? When you stop telling people, because I feel like it's natural for me, it's natural for me to like tell people things. Like my
Mhm.
very close inner circle, I'm not one of those people that can hold in my feelings too much
Okay.
because it turns me into something that I don't like. So I really need to like talk out I gotta like
Release.
talk it out. I gotta
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
I
wish I
can't
was like
hold
that.
it. I can't hold it because it really bothers me and then it like stresses me out and I'm not a really good person
Right.
that's stressed. But there are some people that they go into like isolation mode, just kind of like you were describing, Melissa, that they don't tell anybody things, and then they like it's like they make like their own bubble,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You make like your own bubble, and it's like nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
When you show your face, it's like everything is fine,
Oh
everything is
yeah.
great,
Yeah.
everything is good, and it's just like, wait a minute, is it
But that,
really?
yeah, that actually like got me in a lot of trouble with my family. Like, like, why didn't you talk to us? Like, what is wrong with you? Like,
Right,
they had no idea anything, like, and not even just in my marriage, just my personal stuff that like I
right,
was going through, and like my depression and things like that. That it's like, even to this day, now that like I'm going through this new journey, and like I live by myself when I don't have the kids. Obviously I'm by myself.
right,
And like on those days, like my brother called me the other day, hey, just checking in on you. Like, are you okay? You know, whatever. He's like, are you listening to sad music? And like, whatever. I'm like, I'm
It's like, no,
okay.
I'm just
You know,
chilling.
because
I'm
yeah,
good.
because they're not used to me being alone either. You know, I was a young mom. I had my first child when I was 18, and then I got married at 21. So this is new for everybody. So they're all like, you know. And the other day I called my sister and I had like an emotional day, and I called my sister and like I actually started crying on the phone, and like she literally said thank you to me as we're getting off the phone, because she's like, thank you for calling me. Like she
Right.
was like, because I don't do that. Like that's
Right.
like shocking. So I'm trying to do better even now, but it's like, thank you for
Yeah.
opening up to me and telling me your feelings. I'm like, okay. But it's
Yeah, 'cause you
hard.
know,
It really is hard
yeah.
when you're not
Hmm.
used to that. Like, and then that's like what you described is exactly how I was. I'm like the clown, and you know, if I go to social gatherings and parties, I want to make people laugh, and
Yes.
you know, you have no idea like what I'm going through. And how I met Meech was like through work, and she was having parties at that time, and I'd go. And that was actually like when I was the most depressed, and nobody would know because I'm in there, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. And I go home and I'm freaking miserable. You know, it was
Yeah.
like my escape when I would come out and and be around people. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and also like during that time when Melissa's saying, I was with a partner, with someone who I knew wasn't good for me. You know when you just know, but you don't want to admit it. That's a very like we gotta take accountability for that,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
sometimes what we do is Mrs. want to change a man, little miss want to change a man, and you're like, you know what, he has so much potential, he could
Oof.
do so much better, and you
Oh
think that
yeah.
you're like fairy godmother, and
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna come here and you're gonna change his ways, and little do you know, like your mom's, like every mom says, tú no lo va a cambiar, you're not
Yeah.
changing that man. A man
Yep.
changes when he wants to change. So
Right.
sometimes I feel like, are we realizing, are we truly like, sometimes we know when a guy is not for us, but we're there trying,
You
trying,
see the red flag, you say,
trying.
oh, that's a little
Yeah,
pink.
it's okay, it's
Yes.
okay. And my favorite color is
It's
red.
not too bad, right? Like you're just like, ah, it's not too bad, and you try to make like when you really, really like someone, you're really into them, or you've made something up in your head, like this, like maybe they have other things that you, oh, they're cute and they got a nice
Mhm.
job and they got that, whatever, but then their personality, when you get to know them, you're like, oh my god, but
Yeah.
you envision something already in your head, you're just like,
Mhm.
oh,
Right.
but I want
Yep.
to see this through. You know what I'm saying?
And I
Like,
think that that's what the issue is, right? Us as women, and I know like me in particular, like I already have this thought in my head. Like when I meet someone new, I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And
Oh
then you kind of like, so you get to know the person and it's like, oh, maybe I could deal with that. You know what I mean? But then it
I've had
gets,
worse.
it's like, right. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're like, well, wait, maybe he'll
why you two
change.
like that?
You start making excuses, right? Because
Yes.
how many times have we made
Yep.
excuses for the bullshit that people have done? And it's just like, well, at least it wasn't this, or,
Hmm.
he doesn't do this, or she doesn't do this. And it's just like, but wait a second, that shit is bad in itself. Like,
Yep.
why are you not seeing this?
Yep.
I think a
Yep.
big one too that a lot of women will kind of make excuses for or not see the bigger picture until they're gone is a lot of like the mental abuse, like that
Yes.
manipulation and the gaslighting and things like that, where like I feel like now in this day and age it's being talked about more. Like you hear
Yes.
those words gaslighting
Mm-hmm.
and narcissism, like you hear that more
Mhm.
now, but like growing up I didn't know what that was, or you know what
Right.
I'm saying, or like you didn't hear it talked about so much. So I
For
feel like
sure.
now there's more of an understanding on that, whereas before it would be like, well, he doesn't hit you, or he doesn't hit me or whatever, like he's that, I'm not in an abusive relationship, but
Mhm.
there's some women that like actually are, but in a different form. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Right.
Like
Physically,
you have,
emotionally,
right, you
verbally.
have
Right.
someone lying to
Yeah.
you, or you have
Yes.
someone that like you feel like when you voice a concern to them, all of a sudden it's being flipped, and now
Right.
you're talking about something you did wrong, and you're like, wait, how did I get here? How
Mhm.
did the
Listen.
conversation switch this way?
Oh
Like,
my God.
and
How
it's like,
many
so
times have that
things like
happened?
that we're like, well, or you see somebody else's situation that's like way worse, and you're like, oh, well, it's not like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like maybe you do have a friend that's like constantly cheated on and actually physically gets abused, whatever. And you're like, well, damn, like I'm glad my life isn't like that. But you don't realize that yours is is bad, and it's in a
in
different
a
way.
different way.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
because I feel like, and I know this may be a little bad to say, but I
Eh,
feel like the mental abuse is so much worse than the physical abuse. And
no, that is facts.
let me explain why I say that, right? Somebody hits you, beats you up, right? Okay, the emotional part of it, it's like, the scars, they're there, they'll heal. But
Mhm.
it's like once someone gets into your head in a way where they manipulate, and they just get inside your head to a point where it's just like you always think you're the wrong one. You're always apologizing, or you're
Narcissist.
always making excuses, and it's just like, but wait a minute. Like, it's like mental slavery.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know that sometimes that goes hand in hand. A
Well,
lot of
yeah, it goes.
times,
It does go
yeah, it
together.
goes.
Yeah.
It's truly one is really like it's the same exact thing because yeah, like you said, it's yeah, they go away, but usually they go hand in hand
Right.
because a man
And the
when he
trauma's there.
yeah because when a man gets to that point of raising his hand, he's not saying, "Oh baby, psh, I love you,"
Right.
you know.
Right. No,
So
that's a
it
fact.
goes hand, yeah,
Right,
so
right,
it
right.
goes hand
Yeah.
in hand. I feel like more so also that like women, women need to realize that unless we truly come together and like I talk to Melissa all the time about reading books, self love, personal development. We don't know what we want until we know what we want,
Mhm.
Like do the
right?
research. Yeah,
Do
yeah.
the
Right.
research and really find out because sometimes like for example me, I was raised with a mom that she's not emotional because her mom wasn't emotional, so it's like a
Mhm.
generational trauma.
Right.
So I didn't know at times. I can't say that every relationship that I've had was terrible, but I've had my share where it's like very traumatizing.
Hmm.
And I'm the type of person I always say things happen to me once, they don't happen to me twice
Right.
Hmm.
because I look at my children, I look at my daughter like, damn, she lives with me, she sees this, like, no, it's not fair.
Right.
And even if, like, I know you say you were married for like 2 years, it happened to me too. Like,
Mhm.
when I just had her, I literally was like, I was in this like limbo, like, oh, should I do the right thing and stay, or should I stay and get cheated on, and him not coming home, and then she's gonna think it's okay. Girl, I make the decision. She was my first child, so you know how hard that is when you're trying to have a
Yes.
family, you
Right.
Yes.
know.
Right. And that's the
So
thing.
yeah, so what did I do? I said, you know what? I got to think about her before I think about me because
Hmm.
it's not rational. What you have here right now, you're not thinking right. You're
Right.
thinking with your heart, and sometimes
Right.
your heart leads you to the wrong place.
And it's
Agreed.
impressive that you even were able to think that way at the age of 18. You know what
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying? Because a lot of us young moms, teenagers, whatever, like we'll sit through a bunch of BS because
Mm-hmm.
we're like, we're young. We don't know any better. And like you said, you're like, oh, well, I'm already young with a
Yeah,
kid. So I might as well do the right thing
right.
and have a family and, have us all together because people are already going to look at me wrong for being 18 with a
Yeah.
kid.
Having a
So
baby.
let
Right.
me at least be
Try to
18 and
fix it.
Put a
married
kid
or
in and
committed with
try to
a
make it work.
right.
Yeah.
So I
But
think that
those same people are looking at you and like, oh, whoa, I saw him at the club with someone else. So,
right,
Facts.
right,
you know
and
what
you
I
have
mean?
to,
So you
yeah,
got to think about all of that. No, just women, we need to remember we got to think about ourselves. Like we looking like clowns out there when when you want to be a good wife. Like nah, get out of
right,
here.
and
Nah.
it's also like that common
Mhm.
misconception of like
Pisses me off.
saving. It's like that common misconception of doing it for the kids.
Yeah.
Like thinking like, oh, I'll just stay. And there's people that literally will stay
Hey.
until the kids go to college
Mhm.
and then they divorce. Like, and then it's like, and then they talk to the kids and the kids are like, well, we knew you were miserable this whole time.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
know.
Like I've heard stories about that
I've
where
heard a
like
few stories
I
too.
had like a coworker that I used to work with years ago and she was older. She was like in her 50s and
Mm-hmm.
she was going through a divorce at that time. So her kids were in their 20s or whatever, and she stayed because of that. And then she like sat me down, like we were very close. She was like my
Mm-hmm.
work mom, and we sat down and she cried and was telling me, she's like I stayed with this man for my kids, and then when I talked to my kids they were like, mom, go be happy, like
Yep.
we know that you've been miserable this whole time. And she's like, well, why the fuck
Mm-hmm.
did y'all say that before?
But that's the thing too. It's like
Yeah.
you're so engulfed in the shit that it's
Mhm.
just like you blink and then you're fucking 50. Your
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
are out the house, they're
Yeah.
doing their own thing, and then you stuck with a motherfucker in your house that you can't stand to look
Right.
at.
Right.
And it's
And
just like, well, where did the years go? Right
Yeah.
what
here.
yeah, what do we talk about now? Like it's like the only thing that y'all had in common was the kids at that
Yeah.
point.
Hmm.
And
Right.
then they're gone and you're like, okay, what
What do
now?
we talk about now? And
Right,
it's at
right.
that point, it's like, why waste your time? I always stress it. There's so much life to live.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Don't think that because you went 10 years, 15 years, 20 years not doing it, that doesn't mean you can't start.
Mhm.
You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It just takes you to start to
Right.
love it. Believe
Mhm.
me, once I came out of that dark space, I realized that, you know what, there's so much more that I can do. And I never stopped living. Don't get me wrong. I
Right.
did my thing, and I've always believed in going away and having my time and doing what I like. But I also realized that, you know, I was missing something. Like that spiritual growth. Like I,
Mhm.
I,
Yes.
I definitely, I went into books. I started reading more, so that when, my next relationship, I always say, even if it don't work, this is much better. This is
Yeah.
progress.
Mhm.
You get what I'm
Mhm.
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
I don't put my life on the relationship. Like, oh, this is it. No, it's like, if
Right.
it doesn't work, because it might work for me, but it might not work for him, and
Right.
that's totally fine. Like, my son's father, we literally are like cool, because
Mhm.
literally it didn't work, we fell out, and that's it.
Right.
Mhm.
Keep it non-toxic, that's it.
Yes.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
agree. I'm the same. I'm still in the swamps. I'm gonna say the swamps of my separation. So it's a little
Yeah.
dark
Yeah.
and a little light, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, like
So
It's a roller coaster.
yeah,
You have the
we
yeah,
working through it.
but I can give you a suggestion. My advice is, look for those books. Like, I have books that I can recommend you,
Hmm.
that I can
Send them
send your
send them
way.
to my DM.
Yes, and it's literally a page a day. If you're really busy, because I know, we have things to do, it's a
Yeah.
page a day. It just changes your way of thinking.
Right.
Like, you know what? I never looked at it that way. Like, you're like, God damn. Right, Melissa? Some of the
Yeah, yeah,
pages
yeah,
are
yeah.
really, really good. So it's like all spiritual growth. It's all about how
Yes.
you take things, how perspective. That's all it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't, like, at the end of the day, you can't put all of that on one person. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Like you can't, like, if a relationship fails, no matter how bad you thought that other person was, you're still at fault for some of the things as well, because
Right.
Absolutely.
there's things that you tolerated that that person thought was acceptable. I'm sure there's things you did as well that that person
Mhm.
didn't like, and that was something that they had boundaries on that you were crossing. Like
Hmm.
nobody's perfect, but at the end of the day, I think assuming that one person other than yourself is going to fulfill everything that you need and make you happy,
Mhm.
that's like the biggest mistake that we all make. We all put
Yes.
all that energy in the other person
Right.
instead of ourselves, and that's something that I've had to learn. Like now being alone, I'm forced to like
Right.
figure myself
You
out,
got
like,
you. You got to
okay, what
figure
do
it
I do
out.
now, right? Like
Yes.
what's going to make me happy today, and what should I do, and things like that, where
Yeah.
I start learning, like, okay, I'm going to write a little bit, or like I
Yes.
start going into things that I used to do even from like teenager. Like when I was a teenager, I had a poetry book that was like this thick when I was in high school, and I would like write a poem like almost every day. I was writing something. And then as the years went on, I just stopped, like little things like that where it's like, okay. And then I sit down, and it's hard at first because you pushed it away for so long that now
Right.
I'm telling myself like I can't even do this anymore, but you have to
No,
like
you
keep going,
can.
right? Like I have to like push myself and be like, okay, like even if it's something silly and it's only 5 lines, then and I'll put it away and I'll come back to it. But like
Right.
Mhm.
it's literally like a process of getting to know yourself like all over
Yes.
again and
Yes.
finding
And
what you
even if you
like.
fail, so
Yeah.
what? You failed at other things, and here you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Amen.
Definitely,
Amen.
definitely. They keep going. Don't think that your life is gonna stop right now. It's just starting.
Yes.
Mhm.
Believe
Mhm.
that.
And that saying, because I was talking to someone the other day, and this person was like, "Oh, you only live once," and I'm like, "That's not a really true statement. You live every day.
Every
You
day.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Every
yeah.
day you wake up, you're living. So every
Mhm.
day you wake up, you have a chance to make a change. You have a
Mhm.
chance to
to make it
personally
better.
grow. You have a chance to make it better. Because when you're dead, you're dead. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
It's
There's
over.
no coming back from that.
You know what I mean?
that's it.
Like you don't wake up, you don't wake up, it's
Yeah,
over. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And there goes your chance. So
yeah,
I had to explain to the person, like, you have to think about it on the flip side. Because
yeah.
I know that saying is like so popular. It's like, oh, you only live once. YOLO. But it's like,
YOLO.
no, like
I use that when I'm about to spend a lot of money. YOLO, okay, swipe.
that's a
That's when
good
it
one though.
that's when
That's
it
a
comes in handy,
that's
you know?
that's when
That's
it
when it comes
counts.
in
Yeah,
handy. Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Oh man.
So, ladies, what advice would you give to women that are currently in a situation where they feel like they're losing themselves or have lost themselves? What would you say to kind of like help them out their little rut?
Well, I would start also with therapy. That I know
Yes.
Michi reads a lot. I'm not the one to read a lot of self help books. Like I'll read when she sends the pages a day to me, but I'm like that type that reads like these fiction books about all these crazy things.
Yeah.
Um, but I was, I am big on therapy. Talking to someone too that's like unbiased, because a lot of times, like I
Hmm.
said, like I'm not good at talking to my family because I feel like I'm just gonna hear this certain opinion, or depending on how your family is. If you have a
Right.
religious family, you're going to hear this certain advice. If you have, what I'm saying, a toxic family, you're going to hear that toxic advice. So it's going to be biased when you go, that route. So therapy is a big thing because you get to hear someone's unbiased opinion. They can give you advice, they can help you, use tools as well. I learned so much through the therapy process about myself, so that helped, kind of push me in the right direction to then learn to do things on my own, as far as like different practices of like I said, writing, or even like music. Like that's my therapy
Yes.
too, but it's like therapy is one thing, and just taking the time, honestly, to just be by
Mm-hmm.
yourself sometimes. Like I
Yes.
think I avoided that a lot in the beginning. Like I was trying to find, like, keep myself busy because I was scared to be by myself because I
Right.
didn't know
Because
what to do.
you were trying to fill a void.
Right. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I don't want to be alone in my thoughts. So I'd like, I'm trying to keep myself busy. But once I realized, like, there's some days I'm in my bed all day, but I'm not like in a depressive state in my bed all day. Like I'm
Like you just
just
chilling out.
I'm looking at my phone, or I'll watch TV, or I'll read something, or I'll start, doing just different things. But I'm like, I'm relaxed and I'm at peace with myself. It's like you have to get to a point where you enjoy your own company and
Yes.
not
Yes.
just depend on, that of others.
Yes.
Yes. And Melissa said so many things that, are so helpful. What I can add to that is things that have helped me, like she said, has been like books. I do suggest the therapy because you do, like she said, that non-biased opinion, like someone who doesn't know, who's listening to you, who's catching the little signs, because sometimes we need accountability,
Oh, they will check you quick.
self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness, you know what I
I
mean?
got an accountability partner. She's always checking my ass
Yeah,
every day.
Exactly.
She be
yeah.
like,
So
"Hold
you
on, wait a second." I'm like,
wait, you also,
"Fine."
so I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like that also helps. What I did when I was going through, when I was separating from my previous relationship, I always say this: I did a pros and cons. And girl,
Yes.
listen to me.
She
I
pulled out
was
the
like,
Write
scroll,
it
like.
I
down.
didn't lie to myself. I
Right.
wrote it and I took time. Like I took like 2, 3 days writing it, and I would, when I would try to find an excuse, I'll stop myself. Like, no, you have to say what it was. Do what it
Right.
is. Say what it is. And when I was done, I'm like, Lord, child,
It was like a
what?
CVS receipt.
Damn, them CVS receipts
It's
are
like
long.
a
What the
thing.
Lord,
hell?
yeah. So I realized, I'm like, this is not me loving myself. You have
Mhm.
to really truly take
Mhm.
accountability, and I know that it hurts in the beginning because you're
Mhm.
so used to someone being around, even if they bothered you, even if it was, just to have them there
A
standing,
body, yeah.
you were so used to it. Just like she said, get used to the fact of being alone, loving yourself,
Right.
finding that new you, the new reason for everything that's happening. I
Right.
feel like definitely find your reason.
Yes. I
Amen.
I I agree with all of that. I think that those are really good. That's really good advice for anyone that's feeling or in a situation like we've discussed here. I know for me, like it is my own ego. Like Seriously. So I'm just one of those people like, yo, I'm that bitch. So why am I like why am
Why
I
am I
dealing
dealing with
with
this?
this? So
Yep.
it's like every
Good for
time I
you.
get to a space, because I do have my moments where I'm like, maybe this can work. Maybe,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? But then I start thinking about things and then I'm like, nah, I can't do it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like in a personal struggle with my own self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you think about the value. You think about your value, like as a
Yep.
woman. How do you value
Amen.
your own self? How do you look at yourself when you look in the mirror? Like, what do you see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Yep.
and that was like an issue for me. And like I was in a really bad space for a little while where it was just like, I got lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then, you start kind of like getting yourself out. So I would say like definitely therapy, read, surround yourself with people that are
Mm.
positive.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people that want the best for you,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and
That's a
and
big
can
one.
give you that good advice that you may need sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's
You know
Yep.
true
what I
because I
mean?
realized too. I had some toxic people. Like when you start reassessing and then you start getting
Right.
happier, and you start
Mm-hmm.
changing your perspective and your way of thinking and your way of living, you start looking at people like, oh, wow,
Yeah,
that's
Right.
yeah.
that
Like
was not
I don't
good.
relate to you
Right.
anymore, right?
Exactly.
I don't
And that's what's
relate to
gonna
you
happen with the guy once you over him. You're gonna look
Right.
back like,
right.
oh
Like, oh,
damn.
okay,
And then
but
you notice like people will just start like falling, like they just start
yeah,
falling
and it's
off.
fine. And then you realize you learn who is who. And I think like sorry that I keep going, but like
No,
with
it's
the
fine.
with us having daughters as well, I think
Yes,
that's
because we all
another
have
big
girls.
thing where it's like, all right, what kind of woman do I want my daughter to see and to look up to?
Yes.
Amen
You
to
know,
that.
Yep.
because we are products of our, childhood and how,
Childhood.
we saw
Our
our
Mm-hmm.
environments.
mothers, and
Yes.
it wasn't the greatest example. Latin families,
No.
it's very like the wife and the mom has a very specific role, and
Yes.
we kind of have to break that cycle and show our
Yes.
daughters that, what, like as women, we can be bosses.
Yep.
We can run a household, we can do all these things,
Yep.
and that a man doesn't have to be the one to come save you,
Right.
That's right.
obviously.
Right.
Yeah, love is wonderful, love is beautiful, and you should want somebody to build a life with, but they shouldn't be the prince charming or the knight in shining armor that's going to come save you and make your life better. Like
Right. They
we
Absolutely.
need to
should
teach
be
them
a
that we could do
pleasant
this. Yeah,
Yes.
addition,
exactly.
Absolutely.
a pleasant addition to your life because
Amen.
shit,
Mhm.
we don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need the drama. We don't need it. And on that note, ladies, tell the people where they can find y'all.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, okay. So we are all in on everything, and you can find us on Instagram or TikTok.
Yes.
Oh, you're
That's
on
it. All
TikTok?
in
Oh,
on
I gotta
Yeah.
everything.
go.
Yes.
We're
We're
trying.
trying to do our
We're
TikTok videos.
trying.
We're
We're
trying to
trying.
I'm
trying to get hip with the
excited.
kids. Yep.
Man, I gotta go on there and I gotta follow y'all. I'm on TikTok
Yes.
too. I'm
Yes.
trying. You gotta
We're
like
trying to
a little
build
bit of
it. Yeah.
everything.
We're trying. We're trying.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was amazing. Thank you for your perspectives and have a good night.
Thank you for
Likewise.
having
Thank you
us.
for having us.
Bye.